Hey everybody, Marcus here. So today's watch along video is going to be about, well, Gen Z and the struggles they seem to be facing that they apparently have a very hard time verbalizing. And the video I found got about 500,000 views. It seems to resonate quite deeply with, well, that particular generation, specifically when you look at the comments sections. So I thought it was worthwhile to go through it. Now, what struck me as relevant in this video was the exact struggle of being able to verbalize what was happening as a conclusion to this particular man in the video. It reminded me a lot of this girl I worked with when I was producing one of my songs. So I put up an ad on Facebook about 2 years ago, sourcing female singers for a few of my projects. Got about 40 responses, met with 6 of them, worked with 3. And one of those 3 was a 22-year-old girl. She came to my apartment where we were recording, where my studio was, and from what was supposed to be a 1-hour tracking session, and we did track for that 1 hour, turned into a 12-hour conversation. She sat across from me in the living room, giving me the confession of her, well, basically her entire life. And it was obvious to me that she was an angry person. And she was angry because of the frustrations of her environment, her coworkers. She worked in retail, never went to university. And the stories she told me were very detailed and analytically broken down. They weren't value judgments. She wasn't calling her coworker stupid. Well, she did, but she wasn't telling me a story of conclusions. She was describing situations and then inferring from those situations certain conclusions, amongst them being that these people, she doesn't understand why these people behave the way that they do. After about 20 minutes of listening to her, it became apparent to me that this girl is highly intelligent. In both, you can see it both in the eyes, but also in her mode of speech and her mode of storytelling. And it seemed to me kind of obvious why her life situation was the way it was. But it also seemed to me obvious that she didn't know because she didn't have the language to describe it as a concept. So the first thing I did was inform her. It's like, her name was Agnes. I'm like, Agnes, you do realize that, you're a very intelligent girl. And these people you're talking about are kind of dumb. And the math that you're doing in your head, the logical math, they can't do that. You can, they can't. And there's nothing you could do in terms of interacting with these people, correcting them, to get them on that level, to be able to process information that the way that you can process it, to derive the same conclusions that you can derive. It just doesn't work like that. That kind of took her off back, and she sat there thinking a little bit, and she said to me, Marcus, you're the first person to ever tell me that I'm smart, which to me was a little bit, shocking because it was very obvious, both in her storytelling and also in her decisions. So we spent the rest of that time, after about that 20 minutes, first hour, exploring the subject of intelligence even further, and not so much in a philosophical manner, but more in a practical, how does it exist in your life sort of way, because it was clear that she was deriving a lot of value from this. And as the conversation emerged, and I introduced a number of topics to her, that anger started really dissipating. She stopped dreading going to work. At least in that conversation, it became clear to me that her immediate situation of working at a retail store, because she never went to university, it wasn't as frustrating to her anymore. And I know that conversation had a meaningful, lasting impact in her life because of what happened later. Later on, about a month or two after, I did the sessions, then I had to mix it and master it, and there was a few back and forth conversations between Agnes and I. And in that time frame, before I actually finished the song, she applied to university. She applied for some computer science program. It was cybersecurity. And she decided that she was going to keep her retail job up to the point where she goes to school, then look for something else while she was in school, probably something at the university. So the reason she ended up deciding to choose university, even though she had no plans of that, which became clear in our initial conversation, she did not consider university at all, is because somebody told her that she's smart. And given that bit of information about herself, she could reconceptualize her options in life. And that's a lot of what I hope to achieve with this video we're going to watch here, is because this man speaking in this video seems a lot like Agnes to me. This is somebody who is struggling to find the Lego blocks of concepts in their framework of words and concepts to be able to account for what is happening to him and what is going on in the world in of itself. And I think that is one of the not failings, that's one of the negative sides of youth, is that when you're conceptualizing the world, you have a limited set of Lego blocks from which to build that conception. And as you get older, you acquire concepts, whether they be from, literature or from philosophy or wherever, it doesn't really matter. You gain a broader collection of these blocks with different shapes and sizes and colors in order to glue together your experiences to something intelligible, something that makes sense. And hopefully that's what I'm able to do with this video, because I sat thinking a little bit, like a good hour or two after I watched it the first time, trying to figure out what exactly is going on that is amounting to the experiences of this man. So let's get started and see how it goes.
So I've just sort of hit record. I don't really know what this video is going to be, but I'm just here working my 9-to-5 job that I've been working for about 4 years now. Just a video editor. I work from home, and just this can't be it. Like I can't go on like this. We can't go on like this. Like, how is what I'm feeling now so opposite to what I was feeling back then? And by back then I just mean like, yeah, technically a kid, but even like a young adult. This shit really just sucks the soul out of you. There's so many things that I want to do, so many places I want to go, but your work, your job just drains that energy from you. I think about all the people that are no longer in my life, which there's a lot of people. Pretty much everyone that was once in my life is no longer in my life. The fact that I could just come home after a day of school and just kick it on the Xbox, have genuine conversations with my homies. I'm literally just venting at this point. And at first I thought I wanted this channel to be more gaming focused, but the more that I dig deep in myself and think about what I want, it's like, yeah, gaming's cool. I like gaming. I like old school gaming. But I think I'm in love with that time period more than I am the games. I think I'm in love with the innocence of that time period that allowed me to play the games, because there was nothing else in my life of significance that was going on. I didn't have, a partner that I had to uphold just positivity for them. I didn't have bills to pay, but I'm just sitting here on my work break, taking the 30 minutes of the day that I have to myself, and just, I don't know, just sitting in the what ifs, sitting in the how do I get out of this? And I've tried so many things.
So the first thing that comes to mind when I'm watching this is that he's clearly longing for the past. Now, normally depression sets in if you dwell in the past. I don't think this man is depressed. What I think he's experiencing is mourning. It sounds like mourning to me. I mean, he's talking about having a childhood that was fairly glorious in his recollection of it, where he had this carefree existence of just, as he says, chilling with his homies, playing video games. And that would make sense, that being thrown into the real world after you had a childhood like this, you're going to experience a sense of loss, except it's not so obvious immediately that that took place, because you knew growing up that childhood was going to end, that you had to enter the real world. So nobody was surprised. He wasn't surprised that that was going to end, except the lived experience of it was emotionally very different from what he imagined it to be. Now, the world post the life on rails, which is the school system, university, and living with your parents. It doesn't take care of the day-to-day issues for you. Everything is now on your head to solve. And I think that was really the shocking element that was introduced into his life that caused that sense of loss for the past. Because if you think about some of the complaints that a lot of people have around, parenting these days, specifically helicopter parenting, what do helicopter parents actually do? They try to control the lives of their kids in some sense, but what they really are doing is removing the need for the kid to think. And this can go to pretty extremes. And one of the examples I have from my life to talk about this extreme is actually with my nephew Adrian. So I remember when Adrian was about 9 or 10 years old, when I was visiting Canada, I took him to Harvey's. Now, Harvey's is a burger joint in Canada. It's a chain. And the way Harvey's is structured is that you have two main decisions to make during your interactions with the staff there. At first, you have to decide the core burger that you want. So whether you're getting a regular burger, a double burger, a cheeseburger, a bacon cheeseburger, or whatnot. And then you're moved down the line, much like in Subway, where you have to then make the second decision of what toppings do you want on that burger? Do you want ketchup, mustard, and whatnot? So there's two decisions that are made in sequence that have no wrong answers that you would think would be easy enough to make. But when I went in there with Adrian, I ordered what I wanted to eat, and then I look at him, and I say, Adrian, so what do you want, buddy? And he looks at the menu, looks at me, looks at the menu, looks at me. And I'm watching this interaction take place because now it's drawing out about 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds. There seems to be a discomfort brewing because the cashier is waiting for us to order. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, why doesn't he know? Normally you would just introspect and know what you feel like. And if you didn't really feel like anything specific, you would get something that you would normally get. But Adrian then looks at me and says, well, what do you think I should have? I'm like, what do you mean? What do I think you should have? This it's a burger joint. This isn't a thing about eat your vegetables or eat some candy. They're all equally good and bad at the same time. This is a decision that should be trivial to make. So I told him, I'm like, Adrian, this is not a right or wrong decision. Just pick anything. It doesn't matter. And it's like, oh, okay. Okay, I'll have a cheeseburger. I'm like, okay, great, cheeseburger. So we move down the line. He gets his cheeseburger. And we're in the same situation again, because now the second decision needs to take place. Adrian, what do you want on your burger? Looks at the toppings, looks at me. Looks at the toppings. I'm like, Adrian, it doesn't matter what you get. Just get what you normally get. And so he did exactly that. And I thought to myself, I'm like, why is it so hard for this 8, 9-year-old to be able to decide what burger he wants and what toppings he wants? And then I remember all the interactions that I had with him and my sister and brother-in-law and that whole family whenever we went out together to eat. They would make all the food decisions on behalf of their kids. They would tell the kids what they wanted, what they felt like. Oh, you should have this because you don't like that, or you last time you ordered something like this, you didn't like it, so you should order this instead. So they were processing all the thinking for such trivial and, not relevant choices in the lives of the kids, to the point that they robbed them of their faculties to make any sort of decisions. So why I bring this up is simply because this man potentially experienced something very similar, is that part of the reason his childhood was so carefree is because somebody else did the thinking on pretty much all grounds for him. He was in school, meaning that the teachers told him how success looks like, meaning what he needed to do in order to achieve good grades, what he needed to study, when he needed to show up. His parents at home, in turn, would have probably done his laundry, done the cooking, done all the thought process in relationship to his day-to-day activities, when he can come, when he can go. And even if they were lenient and not spoiling him in the sense of buying everything for him, they were removing a lot of these moments of friction that you would encounter in day-to-day life about decision-making, even on trivial matters. So I can very much see that it was a carefree existence where the only things you needed to think about was articles of pleasure. But then when you're thrown into the real world, you have to make all these little choices, and that must be overwhelming. And we're talking about like things that an adult would typically consider fairly trivial. I mean, just imagine going grocery shopping. What are you going to buy? What are you going to make out of it? Let's say you're choosing toothpaste. Which toothpaste brand are you going to buy? It seems like a silly decision, but there is a choice to be made because the shelves are stocked with a lot of brands, a lot of flavors or whatnot, a lot of shapes and sizes and prices. So you do have to make a choice of some sort. Yeah, we older people, we don't even look at that as choice making, just grab stuff that you normally did, but there is decision making going on. And I know for a fact that you can get exhausted from making decisions is a real thing because all-inclusive vacations and all-inclusive resorts, cruise lines, a big part of the appeal of the selling point of why people go on this is because there's no thinking to be done. You basically buy a package that tells you where you need to be. You know, the buffet is all available there for you, so you don't have to choose from a menu. You just choose from the buffet. The activities are fundamentally set. You just kind of exist, kind of go on a whim. There's not much you need to do up here in your head to function in that setup. So being thrown in the real world from that sort of environment, from that, in a way, idealistic childhood, it's like he was living in a form of paradise. To be thrown out of paradise now into the real world, which must seem like hell, definitely would create a sense of loss in you. So to me, it sounds like he's mourning, but he can't be mad at anything because nothing bad happened to him. He's mourning for good things. Well, obviously you mourn because something good has passed. You don't mourn for bad things, but he's mourning for something good that's passed. And it's hard for like a millennial or a Gen Z or anybody older to really sympathize with his situation because he had it good. He didn't have a rough childhood. He had a great childhood. And now he's in the real world, but he's suffering because he's mourning. It's a complicated set of emotions. There's more to it, I think, than just the mourning, but I'll get to that later.
I've tried so many things. I've already tried the YouTube route. I've tried freelance video editor route. I've tried fucking DJing. I've tried producing music. And a new venture that I'm trying, where it's like trying to sell clothes and start a brand there, it's like I'm just stuck with this feeling where it's like, should I even try? Like, I've failed at everything else. I'm mid at everything else. Like, this can't be life. Where I'm at, where we're at, like, this can't be life. Like, the spark is just gone. I look at today's sunsets and I hope I have the same feeling that I had looking at sunsets when I was younger. You know, when I was a late teen, early adult, a child, skating around, whatever, suburb. But I just can't recreate that feeling. I just can't. It's like a feeling that's I know so well, but I just can't grab it. I just can't replicate it. Just having those moments where I just stop and breathe in the air. I'm always just trying to replicate what I once felt. And it's so sad, like saying it, that's what it is.
But that's the thing, there must be an emotional disturbance happening in him of some capacity because you don't lose the faculty to appreciate a sunset, articles of beauty or whatnot just because you're getting older. And even having a day job doesn't remove that from you. In fact, I think a lot of adults re-energize themselves after leaving work for a short period of time. So you're tired coming out of work, but you're excited when the weekend is approaching. So there's a brewing positivity within you. And that comes obviously from acclimation. You know what the weekly cycle looks like. So you anticipate certain moments in it. Like there's Wednesdays, which is like, okay, half the week is basically over. Now the weekend is coming. And then you start to get closer to, say, vacation times. And that also energizes you a little bit. You live in the state of anticipation for things within this less idyllic structure of the real world. But nonetheless, you can invoke these positive emotions. So it's not like positive emotions abandon you when you enter the real world. So there has to be some phenomenon that's causing an emotional aberration within this man. Either there's a depressive aspect of it or there's something going on if he can't invoke positive emotions within himself on things that used to be able to compel that.
And as I grow older, I realize that that's what a lot of people deal with. That's what a lot of people think. No one really vocalizes it. And I guess that's why I'm generally just going to shift my content into expressing this, because I know so many people feel the same, and I know so many people feel trapped in their jobs, and it's like, I'm 26 now. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep doing this. I can't. I need to go back to how I felt, and I know it's impossible to go back to how I felt originally, but
It's not impossible. It's impossible to go back to the life that you led before. That's what's impossible. The feelings themselves are independent of that particular life. I remember I had a similar effect on me. Now, not exactly this, and it was very targeted. My time in university, the first time I went, was glorious. I mean, I had a blast just hanging out with, well, studying too, but hanging out with a lot of new people in a new environment, partying. I mean, you got to the age where you could go to bars and drink. A whole new set of experiences was emerging. But I never dreaded the real world. And when I entered like professional employment full time, I did not experience this. There was no sense of loss. I felt that I've had a great time. Now I'm moving on to new, different times, which are also going to be great. They're going to suck at first because you got to build yourself up. But it was a little bit exciting because it was new, and you had ideas of how your life was going to be structured. It's just you knew you had to struggle in order to get there. But after a while, the day job didn't really grind me down as much as fond memories of university. I'm like, well, those were good times. But it wasn't a comparison now is worse. It's more like, those were good times too. And I carried that for a long time, for a decade, until I decided in my 30s, about 30 years old, you know what? I'll go to university a second time. Why not? So I did. I went to Trinity College Dublin in Ireland to study philosophy this time around, thinking that I was going to recapture an aspect of the past. And I restructured my life in order to accommodate this university experience. But within the university experience itself, I tried to go back and create similar events that happened the first time around. And I did succeed with that. The events did occur a second time around, but my reaction to them was no longer the same. So I remember being in a dorm party, you know, a 30-year-old guy, a bunch of 18, 19-year-olds at a dorm party. They invited me there. I didn't invite myself some weird, creepy old guy way, but I just got along with the youth. And I'm sitting in this dorm party and I'm looking around and everything is happening the way I remember it, 10 years ago. But I'm not experiencing it in that same positive way I was before. It wasn't unpleasant. It was just, yeah, I'm kind of too old for this. My interests have changed. I'm not the same person to be able to relive university the second time the way I lived it the first time. So I had to change my strategy. And what I did was start to go with what felt right at my new age of 30 and the new person I was. And I started hanging out more with the faculty at that point because they were similar to my age, some of them. I was actually older than a couple of the adjunct professors at that university. But I'd hang out more with them than the student body. I still hang out with the student body, a certain select group of people, but I spent a lot more time with the faculty. There was a coffee shop adjacent to the university itself, with many of the philosophy professors would go to in between their lectures. So I knew this, and I'd go there as well. We'd sit there, we'd argue philosophical subjects about the structure of the academy itself. I mean, I have good stories to tell about, what the philosophy department is like internally. But I created a new set of positive experiences in university when I went the second time that did not look at all the way they did the first time around. Because when I tried to recreate that first time around, it didn't work. It did not evoke the same response as the first time around. So this man is he's definitely longing for that feeling, but he can't recreate it. He can't recreate it by repeating what he did in his youth because he's too old for that now. He's changed.
Can create a similar energy. I just don't know the path to do that. It's even a Friday today, and the weekend's cool, but I'm just tired from work, and I just find myself catching up or planning where I can escape this life. It just feels like I have no time to myself. And I don't mean that physically, I just mean like if you compare it to back then, it felt like every minute of every day was ours. Even if we were in school, the time was ours.
It's the mental space. His mental space is all eaten up. And this is what I was talking about with these decisions that he has to make now that he undoubtedly never had to make while in his childhood. So, like he's saying, he's not even physically tired. He's just exhausted internally. And that's why he can't evoke these feelings. He'll get used to it. It's a facet of acclimation. So any Gen Z watching, you guys will get used to it eventually. You just need to understand what's happening internally and celebrate the fact you had it great at one point in time, because a lot of older people, we can't make this claim of our childhoods being idyllic and a point of nostalgia as a whole. Normally, we were kind of like 1 foot in this childhood paradise and 1 foot in hell, which is 1 foot in the real world. Because I remember even at the age of 8 and 9, I kind of started working. I was collecting garbage around the apartment building I was living in for $2 once a week with my buddy Peter, so we could buy a slice of pizza and play, arcades for an hour or something. So we were already somewhat familiar with what to expect in the real world after childhood ended, because we were already doing some of those things during our childhood. But if this man and Gen Z in general never really lived that life, then they were both feet in this kind of childhood paradise, and now they're both feet in hell. Whereas for us, Gen X, me being Gen X, we were kind of 1 foot in each. So moving the 1 foot out of childhood into the real world with both feet now, I mean, it was a step down in some senses, but it wasn't shocking. We already had that resilience for that decision making, that scheming, that, adult-like life mentality of needing to fend for yourself. That was already part of our childhood, where it doesn't appear to be the case that was part of his childhood. So now everything seems to be, well, quite draining.
I know that sounds crazy, but I know some people understand what I'm talking about. One of the closest things I feel like I can get to feeling those feelings that were present 10 years ago or whatever is new music. But even then, it's like I don't have that same emotion. It feels something fresh, something new, but the emotion's not. It's not fully there. I just feel drained. I feel like the work thing is really sucking my soul. I don't know if it's time. I don't know if it's growing up. We're always told as kids, you're gonna regret saying you want to get older, and we're like, screw that, man. I can't wait to grow older. But like, they were right. And if you're a younger kid watching this
is an important point here. He was told what to expect, but he didn't believe it emotionally. I'm sure he believed it intellectually in some capacity, even though he's saying he didn't. But he was given the information ahead of time. Therefore, he anticipated some sort of future emotionally, adult life emotionally, to be a continuation of what he was experiencing immediately. Because if you knew deep down that something bad was going to happen in the future, you would not have been so nonchalant about anticipating that event. You would have somehow been scheming and planning for it before it happened. He obviously did not assume there was going to be any meaningful change between childhood and adult life. Whether he didn't think about it, but he definitely didn't emotionally anticipate a change. And then it happened. And now the question really becomes, why did he think that adult life would feel the same as his childhood? And I have a theory about this, and it's a theory that delves down into betrayal. So I think that a lot of Gen Z were betrayed, but by whom and how? So what was their access to information about adult life? Where was it originating from? Now, clearly, no one in his immediate surroundings, like his parents or older siblings or whatnot, would have told him that the adult life was going to be the same. Now, he's saying as much in this video that he was warned ahead of time. but yet somehow he internalized a different story, that it was going to be the same, because he took no action to prepare for this in a reality that he's living through now. So he must have built up an image of adult life from somewhere else that looked the same as his childhood. And the only place I can imagine that he got that impression from was from influencers. Because influencers portray this glorious lifestyle, except that they're adults, they're older, but they're not that much older usually. Some are, but predominantly I would presume that Zoomers would have been watching content by influencers relatively close to their age, 5 years, 10 years at the max older than them. So these influencers were presenting this lifestyle of an adult life that seemed to be like a bigger, better version of what Zoomers were living now, this carefree experience with glamour all around them, all these fun trips and dinners out and women, men, whatever. It didn't really matter. They showcased this glamorous life. So if I was exposed to that growing up, thinking that that's what adult life looks like, I'd have nothing to worry about. I'm like, yeah, it's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I know what it looks like. I know what it looks like. And I think also Gen Z were complicit in this, because some of them became influencers themselves to portray the same sort of lifestyle for clout or whatever the particular asset they were accumulating through these displays of grandeur. So older millennials would have given Gen Z a false image of adult life through these influencer videos and images. Gen Z in turn would have assumed that's to be the case and disseminated that impression amongst each other as well, that there's this carefree attitude, if by no other reason or no other method than by simply not questioning what the influencers were showing, because the adults in their lives were telling them a different message. So there must be a sense of betrayal happening in this man as well, but he has no target specifically to point to on who betrayed him, because ultimately no one really lied to him in a sense. His parents didn't lie to him. The influencers were just spreading an image. They weren't selling. Well, I don't think the influencers directly sell anything to the people that they're trying to influence other than the products, but it's more like it's all subconscious. They're not overtly telling you your life is going to be exactly like this, except in the case where they're selling a course, then they will tell you that and buy my course to make it happen. But they create this facade that simply adult life is like this, and travel blogs do this, and food blogs do this. And I mean, it's permeated in the social media space. So it's almost certain that these Gen Z feel betrayed in some capacity, whether or not they can identify it as betrayal. And you couple that betrayal with the mourning of the past, and the mourning can even translate now into the future, because having now lived, this man, 4 years, 5 years in the industry, he can see that there really isn't all that much else going on in his life, at least, or in the lives of others, than what he's already living through now. So it seems like the future is hopeless, because it's more of what he has now. What he has now sucks emotionally for him. And what he remembers from the past was glorious. So he's mourning the past, feels betrayed at the same time, because the future is not shaping up, or even the present shaping up, but he has no one to blame, no targets. That's what it seems like to me.
Even if you're 25 and younger, 25, I consider a kid. Like, just cherish everything. Cherish those sunsets. Cherish those deep breaths. Cherish falling in love. Cherish the homies. Whether it's just a group chat where you're sending memes. Whether it's an Xbox Live party. Whether it's a Discord call. Whether it's just seeing that one random dude or girl from school and it's just like you barely talk, but you're just comfortable kicking it around them. It's like everything's different. It's like I'm living life on manual mode. You know, they make those memes like I'm breathing in manual mode. It feels like I'm living life in manual mode now. Everything has so much weight to it. Everything has so much thought to it. Even me making a video right now compared to me making a video as a kid. It's like I'm making it right now because I want to grow a channel. I want to express my thoughts. I want to be heard. But as a child, it's just like yeah, this is fun. I'm making Minecraft videos with my homies.
Yeah, this is exactly what I was saying. Is everything was taken care of for him when he was a kid. All the thinking was done, and this manual mode, which is this video is literally the first time I've ever heard this expression, living in manual mode. It sounds exactly like what I said earlier. Is now all the little decisions, like what kind of burger do you want, Adrian? What kind of toppings do you want on your burger? You have to have the space now. Well, you have to actually make those little decisions now along the way, decisions that their parents, his parents undoubtedly made for him. He didn't have to worry about what type of socks he was going to wear, what brand of toothpaste he was going to use, what toothbrush he was going to use, what soap was laying around, what he was going to eat any given day, what was going to be in the fridge. None of those decisions ever fell on him in childhood. And now everything is in manual mode.
No way.
Yes. Yeah, drink the milk while you walk.
How do you drink?
Hold
Yeah,
right click.
Josh, you're ruining it.
Like what you just saw was me like 15 years ago. Just making a video on Minecraft because it was fun. Like, I can't imagine feeling that way again. With the motivation side, with the happiness side, even just with friends. I don't understand how adults make genuine friends because we're just living on manual mode. If I talk to another adult, it's like we're both walking away analyzing that situation, comparing it to past situations and so on. But as that kid, you just live in it. There's no thought behind it. I really do miss that. I miss the idea of just like, oh, so-and-so's having a party. Yeah, I'm gonna just come along. And you make endless memories. I couldn't even find it in me to go to a party today without stressing about XYZ. And it's not the party and the drinking that I want to experience. It's just the fuck it, let's make some memories type of thing. Even more.
He was living constantly in the present, which is hilarious because that's kind of what every philosophy, ancient Greek philosophy, tries to have you do, is don't dwell in the past, don't dwell upon the future, live in the present. So it looks like his entire childhood, the beauty of it was because somebody else was taking care of all the fine details of it, he could just live in the moment. And that's what he's losing. Now, in Jungian psychology, Jung talks about individuation, as in, as you grow older, you detach yourself from all of existence as an individual. So at first, say you're an infant, you have no sense of differentiation between yourself and your mother, meaning that you're molded into that other human being. But I think you're molded in to all of existence at the same time. There is no you, there's just existence. That seems to be the state that he's talking about. And Jung goes on saying that individuation happens specifically for men as they get older in proportion to their ability to desire to act and enforce their will upon the world. So you start getting that sense of control of your surroundings. And then based on the limits, the human limits of you as a particular individual, you start forming your identity in relationship to who you are because you have this interest, you have that interest. Now it's no longer everything is good. It's more like, what do I like? What don't I like? Starts like at the age of 2, individuation for the terrible twos, and then, it keeps growing. And then further in Jungian psychology, the, distortions of the psyche happen when somebody doesn't undergo that full process of individuation, meaning that you try to cling to the Ouroboros, as in the snake eating its own tail, is a symbol of the unity of everything in one, and then separation is a phenomenon that only happens through the process of individuation. To him, to this man, the daily living was a unified facet. He just existed in it. It was a miasmas taken care of by his caretakers that had no individuation. There were no brands of toothpaste in his reality. There was just toothpaste and you brush your teeth and that's about it. And he wants to go back to that. So you can't. And it's actually psychologically detrimental to do that because I'm not sure if this would be the notion of the devouring mother specifically, but there is an element of this where he's clinging to the dependence of childhood to some extent. And that's not good. And the loss of that, I can imagine being what he's experiencing.
To my point, back then you weren't thinking of making memories. You were just doing it. Like you were literally just... I hope some people watching this can understand what I'm saying, because I really feel it. I really feel it in my bones. I really feel it in my soul. And it just feels like there's no going back. And no matter how hard I mentally try to get back to where I once was, I just know it's impossible. And even me trying to mentally get back to where I was, I'm also physically doing things in the current, in the present, to allow myself to get there. I'm trying to earn money so I can kick back and relax. But the fact of earning money is not making me kick back and relax, it's making me stress. I don't want to travel back in time per se, but I just want to have a similar mindset as I did back then. I miss the old homies. Don't get me wrong, I'm thankful for my life right now, my partner. That's it. I'm thankful for my partner. But even then, it's like, feels like we're just living to survive, you know.
He's not grateful for the fact he had a childhood like this. I think that's one thing he should look at it. He should look at his childhood from a place of gratitude as opposed from a place of longing, because childhood does pass, obviously, for everybody. And the fact that he could enjoy something like this, and Gen Z in general could enjoy something like this, was something that the older generations did not experience, because I doubt any of us really have this nostalgic yearning for our childhoods. It never happened to me. It never happened to anybody from, well, Gen X, younger Gen X that I know of, or millennials even. I mean, this is a new phenomenon. That's why it's kind of taken people off guard and difficult to sympathize with, because, well, we didn't live through it. And they're somewhat complaining about having it good. So maybe, you know, kids having a worse childhood is the solution to this, but I'm not going to explore that topic yet here. He needs to look internally more so than externally. Everything I'm witnessing from this video is a pursuit of a feeling, an internal state, to come about by generating external conditions in order to generate that internal state. Whereas I think the solution here is the opposite, is not to try to find external solutions, but internal solutions. So it's not about making money that's going to fix your problem, because like he's even saying, it's just causing him stress. So activity externally is not helping. So he needs to introspect about what's going on internally. He's muted. His emotions are muted because the same phenomenon don't invoke what they used to invoke. Because he's in mourning. Like this is a mourning, some form of betrayal occurred to him. He's not fully functioning in the way, I guess, you're meant to function. There's something psychologically aberrant about him right now. Not in that crazy way, but in that someone who suffered a trauma sort of way.
Yeah. I just miss new experiences. I just miss feeling a particular way that I just always try to recreate or chase, and it's just impossible. But yeah, I'm just ranting at this point, but I truly want people to know, regardless of your age, that if you have these thoughts, you know, you're not alone. Just these thoughts aren't normalized, these thoughts aren't vocalized. And also just wanted to say, like, I'm going to shift the content of these videos because I realize, like, life is much more bigger than video games. And when I truly look deep into it, it's not the video game nostalgia I miss. It's the mindset. It's the mind frame I was in. It was the time. It was the people around me. And not in particular the certain people around me, but just, you know, you had those stereotypical best homies. The stereotypical falling in love for the first time. The stereotypical finding a new music style that you just connect to so deeply. Yeah, I could just keep going forever, man. But I'm just gonna end the video here. Yeah, it's been once faded, guys. More content like this coming soon. Maybe not as depressing, but I just really need to get this one off my chest and just update those few subscribers that I do have, which I'm very thankful for. I understand if you want to unsubscribe, if you wanted like gaming commentaries and stuff like that, but I'm just gonna get a little more deep and focus on more so the time that these games drop, not necessarily the games themselves.
Okay, so that's basically the end of the video. He rants on a little bit about games after this point. Again, the solutions are internal. Now, the situation seems to be complex. For somebody older looking at this, I mentioned this earlier, it's hard to sympathize. I can empathize because there's a sense of loss happening. But sympathy here, difficult to invoke because he had a good. And now he's facing what all of us have been living for a very long time. So the world he's in now existed while he was a kid. He just didn't participate in it. He's reflecting back on what he had, he does not have now. He needs to reflect back on what he didn't have or what he didn't have to do when he was younger that he has to do now that's weighing him down. This will pass. I'm pretty confident that given enough time, this will pass, as long as this man can build up a proper narrative around what happened to him, why he's feeling the way he's feeling, so that the world can make sense again, so that he can know, but first intellectually, then emotionally, that he's muted. What he's experiencing now is a muted state of being caused by, seemingly to me, trauma. That it doesn't carry on like this if the trauma is removed. And the way you would remove this trauma to some extent is to understand that it's there, and also that it came about because of things that were good in some sense. But the lesson for him to learn into the future, once he gets over this, will be not to really replicate this with his own kids. If he has kids, he says he has a partner. And I think that's part of the lesson here too, is that Gen Z definitely have they have a different environment that they had to grow up in because of social media. The betrayal, I believe, came from social media. But they also had the helicopter parents on the other end that were removing all this need to think, that created this, I won't say soft, but it definitely removed a lot of friction from their lives growing up. So now being faced with all this friction is overwhelming. It brings you into this depressive state. But it will go away once you acclimate. Understand why it's happening, what created the circumstances, which is what I'm hoping to help with, in this video, to give a bit of a language around it. Know that it will go away, and that the spark of life and joy will return to you on the sort of activities you can expect from the adult life, because even working a day job is, in a sense, just a parallel to being in school. Like, it's not exactly the same, but it's the same structure, that there's somebody who's telling you where you have to be between what and what hour, telling you what to do, and giving you instructions on how you can progress. So it's no longer about test taking. Now it's about delivering projects on time, work projects. And you can build that youthful condition of joy that he's describing within the context of a day job. And that's it. I mean, there's no caveat to that. It can be done. I've done it. Pretty much everybody's done it. It just sucks for them that they had to, again, no sympathy here, suffer through a good childhood, a carefree, thinking-free childhood, live in the moment for a good deal of time. And now they're faced with the adult life. So yeah, I wish Gen Z all the best, but, you guys will have to suffer through this and somehow figure out how to deal with it. Best of luck. Thanks for listening. Go team.